Good morning, guys. Welcome to this Wednesday, August 27th. And so far, we're holding on to that overnight gain. The late in the afternoon rally we had, they held on. They've been holding on to that gain going into the overnight, pretty much all night. And we are right up here, actually flirting with the highs again. So uh, going into today's trading, the big news for the day. It's going to be the Nvidia earnings coming out after they close. News-wise, financial news-wise, we had mortgage apps come out at 7. Not a big deal. Kind of a mixed bag there, but not big up or down. We had an old report coming out at 10:30. A small survey at 11, but that's about it. So not much going. A 5-year auction at 1. That could potentially be interesting. So that's about it. So a pretty light news day. Tomorrow we get a little bit more. We get GDP, jobless claims, corporate profits, pending home sales, and of course on Friday we get that personal income number. That's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. But going into today's trading, I'm thinking range bound trading, maybe a little bit of strength, and I'm looking at probably a holding pattern going into the afternoon earnings, and then probably going to see a big reaction after that. Potentially Thursday's trading is going to be pretty much impacted. So right now, if they keep trading higher, I'm going to be more leaning into the camp to buy the rumor, sell the fact kind of the dynamic. So I would probably expect, even if Nvidia does great, that it's going to be some little bit of selling going on tomorrow. But that's that's the hypothesis. We'll see how that shakes out. Right now, though, I would start off range bound with a bias to the upside to see if they can retest these highs. If they can keep this going, if they back down below that 64.80s, the session lows or the London low, it's session lows too, but we'll just go back range bound. So pretty aggressive taking off the long bias if they start trading lower. But I mean, at this point, starting off, maybe keep the 64.70s in there. So looking to buy against the 64.80s, 64.70s for rotations back up. But that's about it. If they trade below that, we just back down in this lower range again. If they take out the 64.40s, 40 and 50s, that's low volume area. I think there's a good shot there right back down to 64 again. So that's the bigger area to pay attention to, that 64, 40 to 50. And that's going to be the low of yesterday's trading day session. So if they start taking out these two support areas, the 50s and the 40s, we have a shot at heading back down here towards the lows again. So that's kind of how we get started. On the way up, looking for shorts against the 85 to 90s and the 95s up to the 65 or 5s for rotations back down. We are in the range. We have been going back and forth, so I would not be too aggressive. I would not be too aggressive on the long side. I would still look for these short setups because at this point we are pretty much range bound coming up here. So there's a slight bias to the upside, but we are running into resistance. So it can very well be a spot where we find a good short setup for rotation back here towards that 64.70s. So even if it looks like this is a nice little opportunity for a breakout, the default trade is going to be a failure to take out these resistance areas. Could be the 64.85s, could be the 95s, could be the 65.05s. We just have to wait and see where we get a good setup in the trigger. And if for some reason they blow through all of them, just stay on the long side. But I think the key thing is if you're going to try a long trade, I would be looking for them to take out the resistance area, start trading above it before you start doing that, and keep a tight stop on it. But the default trade is going to be, excuse me. The default trade is going to be a short setup against the 85s, 95s, or 65.05s here. These are the three resistance areas. If we get some early weakness, the ones I would look to buy against is these two, 64.75 to 80s, 64.70s, and that's it. Below 70s, we're going to take off the long bias. Still looking to buy against the 60s, the 50s, and the 40s, but just not as aggressively. The low volume area here at the 40s, if that comes out, that's when we get into a different dynamic and we start heading back into this lower attractor. So that's where we are. So range bound, shift the range bound back to range bound, take off that long bias below the 70s. Still look to buy against the 60s, the 50s, the 40s. That's not as aggressively. I think the better long just the better long setup, if they back off, is going to be here against the 50s and 40s in that low volume area. And if that comes out, well, then the bets are off. We're heading down to that 6400 level. All right. So that's the ES to get started. Range band starting off with that slight bias to the upside, see if they can extend to the upside in the overnight. Just given the yesterday's little pop and the fact that they've been holding the overnight up here. Now, as I said, most of the day session news is not going to do much. I think the bigger thing is always going to be that Nvidia earnings coming out after the close. That's going to be, for some reason, that's been like so goes the market, kind of dynamic. It used to be Apple, so goes Apple, so goes the market, and now it's Nvidia. So looking at the bonds and the bonds and the Nasdaq. Not much to say about it. Bond market is just range bound. We're still right in that middle range. I would just start off range bound trading. If you're trading the bonds, look to sell strength, 15, 16s, 20s, up to the 25s. Look to buy weakness. The 10 here where they're trading is pretty aggressive. 1404 down to 113.30 to 114. So 3 levels up, 3 levels down. Pretty tight range. And if they trade outside of that, we'll look for more of a directional movement. So that's kind of how we get started on Nasdaq, on the bonds. Nasdaq though, that's going to be the interesting one to watch today. If we see the buy the rumor, sell the fact dynamic, so that would be buying these Palantir, Nvidia, AI stocks going into the news, and that could be a big setup. It could be one of those things where the market has a nice little run to the upside and then complete failure tomorrow if the Nvidia doesn't provide spectacular earnings. Because remember, I mean, sometimes they produce pretty darn good earnings, but it's just not good enough. So then we're going to sell off the whole market. So, so that is the caveat, the big caveat for. And I would almost think that we may see some selling on tomorrow, but you just never know. It's just no point of trying to predict that because you just never know how the reaction is going to be like. We trade what we see, and if we see a big selling day tomorrow, then we'll be on the short side of it. So right now, though, on the Nasdaq, same story there. Starting off on the long side, see if they can retest these two resistance areas and take them out. If they take out that 655s, I think we have a shot at getting back up towards this upper area here. So looking to buy weakness early on, 560s, or maybe 560 to 70s, 530s for rotations back up. Below 530s, taking off that long bias. So pretty tight range to get started on the Nasdaq, but if they take out these two resistance areas, the 620s and 650s, I think we have a shot at heading back up in this upper area. It could be a nice long setup going in there, breakout trade to the upside. But as I said, you wanted to clear this area and show a little bit of follow through before you start hopping on that trade. If they back down below that 530s, take off the long bias, go back range. But I'm still looking to buy against the 470s and the 420s. Maybe not as aggressively. 420s is going to take us all the way down here to that volume edge. If that comes out, that volume edge, we can certainly head all the way back into the 23.2 or maybe even lower. The Nasdaq has a little bit more room to work. I mean, until Nasdaq takes out this general area down here at the 23,000s, we're still pretty much in a good shape on capital flow. So they can move pretty good in between here, but they take out that lower area, the 23,000s, that's when the capital fall is going to start changing direction. So that's how we get started on the Nasdaq. Slight bias to the upside. Below the 530s, take off the long bias. Above that 650s, stay on the long side. See how far they can take it. Next level up, you see that volume edge at 23,800. That would be your volume edge to pay attention to. All right, so that's the Nasdaq to get started. Looking at oil and gold. I haven't done much with those guys lately because it's been kind of in a holding pattern, flopping back and forth pretty violently. So, but looking at gold, they are up again, up above that 34.20, 15 to 20. So as long as they hold that these two support areas at 34.15, 15.16, and the 34.20s, we're in good shape to take this higher. I'm just waiting for them to knock it back down to the 33.80. So we'll see if they can do that. But right now they're still in the spot, but they potentially can take it higher. So I would still start off with a slight bias to the upside. Look to buy against this the 22 23s and the 15 16s for rotations back up. But below this 15 16s could be a nice short trade right here to that 33.95, maybe even lower. So that would be a potential short setup to watch for. But as usual with gold, when it happens, it usually tends to happen so freaking fast. And unless you're on it, you really miss the whole thing, and then you're chasing it. So that's usually that's why I don't trade gold very actively, because it's unless you're already in those moves, it's difficult. If you have a nice trending day on gold, yeah, you can try to get on it, but it's usually it happens with like 1 or 2 bars and then you're kind of done. So starting off on the long side on gold, still watch that 15, 16 for potential pullback. And then finally oil. Oil is kind of slowly backing down, but they're still pretty much in a range. And if you look at oil's capital flow, we are just building value right now. So we are range bound, we're building value. They did take it below this area, so we are definitely on our way down. I'm just waiting for the next reason to take another leg lower. So it'll happen as they keep this whole pressure on the energy going. So starting off range bound, look to sell strength at this point against the 63.60s, 90s up to that 64.20s. Rotations back down below above 20s. I would take off the I would maybe lean in on the long side and see if we can run up and test these upper edges at the 65s. And on the way down, looking to buy weakness 62.90s, 62.50s, 62.20s for rotations back up. If they start trading below the 61.70s, this big ledge right there, that's when that's when you want to be aggressive on the short side. At that point, they may be heading a lot lower. But 3 levels up, 3 levels down, pretty much starting off range bound. Let's see if they get some sort of a direction. But you can see oil hasn't done much in the last day. It's been drifting higher, been drifting lower. So we'll see if they can resolve some of these conflicts permanently. Then in the world, then we probably have a better shot at see oil prices dip a little bit. Anyway, so that's oil and gold. Back to the ES, and we kind of left the kind of where we left it. So not much else to say about this. So we'll see. The big news obviously is going to be after the close today when NVIDIA reports and the reaction to that. That's going to be the big deal. So chances are we're either going to see a slight little trend to the upside by the rumor kind of dynamic, and can end up in a sell the fact tomorrow, or probably going to be sitting in a holding pattern. So those are the two things I'm kind of eyeing for today's trading. All right, guys, we'll leave it there, and then I'll see you back at 11:30 for the next update. So good trading, guys, and I'll see you guys back then.